The scene of lamentation is heart-wrenching. More than 40 million homeless people were roaming across war-torn China in 1942. Devastated by war and famine, the farmers had lost their land, and the mothers couldn't save their dying children. Crushed by despair and misery, they had nowhere to flee. Their eyes were filled with wrath, and they let out desperate cries to the heavens. When suffering manifests itself in all those pairs of eyes, who can stand unmoved? This is Refugees, a painting by Jiang Zhaohe. It's the first sweeping portrayal of such darkness and suffering in the history of Chinese ink-wash painting. A giant 2 by 27 meter canvas containing life-size figures. Refugees utilizes the artistic vocabulary of realism to present the poignant tragedy of war. However, authorities try to silence this immense ink-wash masterpiece, confiscating and destroying part of it. Only the first half has survived, but it has become legendary. In 1942, a small courtyard in Beijing's Zhugan Lane welcomed a stream of poor people. In the spare studio, penniless models were drawn on huge sheets of xuan paper. The painter was Jiang Zhaohe, who had always engaged with the laboring masses.
当年是1941年，我父亲呢带着他的学生一起到了南京和上海去画这些流浪在街头的难民。回到北平后，根据这些画稿把流民图的构架搭起来了。他要画出很多典型的人物，就要请模特花钱的。所以呢，我父亲研墨都不够，纸也不够，怎么办？他有的时候只能被迫出没典当行。
At the time, Jiang Zhaohe had already mastered the ink wash techniques to render human anatomy.
Jiang Zhaohe 是接受了西洋画的解剖学和明暗透视，他把结构解决了，而且线条的力度还保持中画的特色。他的用笔和解剖和结构和中国画的书法的力度吻合得相当之好。
In ink wash painting of yore, meticulous delineations was always stressed at the expense of realistic modeling. In portraying similar subjects, painters of the Song and Ming dynasties only use a few lines for the emaciated human body. But Jiang Zhaohe blazed a new trail. His varied brushwork rendered a realistic sense of volume to the ragged skin, bones, and muscles underneath. The lateral application of ink left elusive trails of tears. The subtlety of his shifting texture made the fabrics almost tangible. The colors, though plain and spare, proved powerful and effective. In 1937, with Japan launching its full-scale invasion of China, millions became homeless. With the nation's very existence threatened, Jiang Zhaohe was determined to record the tragedy, lest it be forgotten.
画这些被日本人轰炸的难民，它是不能公开的。于是他一段一段的画，把轰炸的场面藏在箱子里，直到最后把整个大图用大头针别起来，屋子里放不下，一直串联到院子里面。我父亲才第一次看到这幅巨卷的样子。
Sympathy, pity, and awe were all solidified by Jiang Zhaohe in the ink-wash imagery. Many in Beijing admired how the painting represented real life and human suffering, while others thought it ominous and depressing. In combining the poetry of ink-wash and the realism of oil painting, Jiang Zhaohe had become a chronicler of painful suffering. In the midst of chaos, the ink-wash medium was made internal by this image of misery and defiance. When painting human figures, Jiang Zhaohe always started with the eyes. His own eyes were clear and kind. Painting offered him an opportunity to gaze at life levelly. The profound suffering was all observed and recorded by his brush. This was an epic ink-wash work with over 100 figures, each with marked individuality in the collective tableau.
蒋兆和把中国美学和西洋绘画的技巧结合起来的时候，已经走在我们时代的前头了。我想这张画是不朽的，它是伟大的现实主义的力作。
In 1943, after more than a year of work, Refugees was exhibited in Beijing and became a sensation. But on its opening day, the Japanese military police shut down the show. The next year, when it was on display in Shanghai, it was confiscated by the Japanese authorities, not to be seen for nearly a decade. In 1953, Refugees was rediscovered in an atrocious state. The first half has multiple tears, while the second half was entirely destroyed. Thankfully, some black and white photographs taken during its debut exhibition made the painting's restoration possible. The only existing complete reproduction of Refugees is in the collection of the Luzhou Museum in southwest China's Sichuan province. Fate has been as cruel to the painting itself as to the many subjects on the canvas. It seems to be a preordained coincidence. Now, the first half of Refugees has been restored and put on display at the National Art Museum of China, fresh as the day it was completed. Gazing at the figures in the painting, spectators yearn to wipe away their tears and comfort them by recounting the prosperity of today's China and its earth-shaking transformations. We shall bear this in mind and never forget the history. The restored image is now protected by a strong and confident China, striding forward in the inspiring new era.